Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our first user group meeting for NG911 for 2023. I'm going to assume everyone can hear me and see my screen. So I'm watching the chat as well. So if you're having any technical difficulties or anything like that, please let me know. Glad y'all could join us. Today, we'll be doing kind of our usual agenda. Which will be a tag team effort between myself, Will, and Sherry. So I'll cover just real briefly an update regarding what's going on with the NG911 project. And then I'll hand it off to Will Trimble to talk about the NG911 toolbox update, and then off to Sherry Massey for GUMSAG and training updates. So really the only major update I have for the project is regarding the 2021 NG911 imagery. As y'all know, they flew statewide in 2021. It's all public domain imagery. It is now available for download in SID tiles, which are the 24K USGS quad based tiles. You can download those directly from the Desk Hub site. It's also available in a publicly available statewide imagery service, which you can also find on the Desk Hub website, which I clicked on. I added the link there in the slides. And we are doing some testing right now. So we're working on integrating it into the call handlers mapping software, which is Radius Map. So we've been told, I've been doing some testing. We've been told that once we kind of switch over to that imagery, it should be pretty seamless integration for our call handlers, meaning they won't have to do anything. It's just like it's a web map refresh essentially. So here, probably within the next week or so, they'll magically have the new imagery as their background to take 911 calls on. So we're excited about that. We've actually had a few comments recently about from some call handlers telling us that, oh, they tore that building down, or how come I can't see the new baseball fields in the picture yet? So we're glad they're paying attention, and excited to get the new imagery out there. And I guess just so you know, for future plans, I know at this time that we are considering the plans for the next flight as well. So official contract and provider has not been chosen at this point, but just know that that's under discussion, and the plans are to again acquire the 1 foot leaf off imagery statewide, and that would be in 2024. So it seems like that's always so far off, but heck, we're just a year away from it now. So got to start planning for that. And here's just a quick snapshot from the hub. I think it's pretty neat in the hub now that you can actually get a quick view of the data before you actually add it to your desktop software, or whatever you're gonna do with it. So just thought I'd say that for those of you who haven't really explored the hub much to discover data or imagery or whatever, that's just a quick snapshot of how it comes out, so you can interact with it there, or add that service to your desktop, or download the SID files. Okay, so really that is all I have on my side for updates. So any questions about imagery before I hand it off to Will? Not seeing anything in the chat. Okay, I'll keep watching the chat. So if questions come up, go and pop them in there. But at this time, I will hand it off to Will.
Thanks, Eileen. Not a whole lot on my end as well. We have a couple small changes and updates for the toolbox for the start of the year here in the first quarter. If you want to go ahead to the next slide, I'm sorry. Yeah, so the first update is that the changes we implemented that went into effect for Q4 that created a new error in the validation submission process was a success across the board. Pretty much everybody submitted new data this last quarter, and everybody passed the tests. We had a few people reach out to get a little bit of help for dealing with those, but it seemed like in general that people didn't have too much trouble taking care of the couple of small errors that may have popped up for most of the PSAPs. So thank you to everybody that participated in cleaning up any errors that they had in the new checks, and for everybody getting on board with making these changes and completing them all in a timely fashion. So thank you for that. And So we'll probably have a new toolbox release. It's a little bit late in the quarter now, so probably the start of quarter two. We ran into a little bit of a check issue on a blank value in the authoritative left and right field in the road center line feature class, and it's causing some issues with some of PSP's MSAG generation. So we're going to change up some of the checks a little bit to make sure that we eliminate those blank values and you have a yes or no entry in that field. And so if you happen to be one of the counties that had one or two of those, you'll see a new error in your toolbox that'll just say that there's a blank value here and you need to fill in some yes or no value. But it should have a minimal impact or no impact on most of the PSAPs and their data submissions. And I'm going to try and throw in every quarter a friendly data quality reminder. So for quarter one here, the one I wanted to kind of remind people on is to look at their last update field. If you're making new features or you're changing data spatially, you need to make sure that you actually go into the attribution of those polygons or lines or whatever else you're changing and change the last update field. That really increases our data usability and accuracy. An example that we've run into recently is looking at municipal boundary polygons that are coming in from a couple of different sources, and we're trying to look at which one has the most recent polygons, and a lot of those dates haven't been completed, so it's sort of a little bit of guesswork in comparison to figure out which one is the most recent one. So just a reminder to fill in the attribution on the last updates throughout your data if you can. We appreciate it. And that's about it. The toolbox story map is still available. As toolbox changes get released, there'll be more documentation in there and description about different processes, new tools, error messages you'll run into, and just a little bit of helpful tips and guides to working with whatever changes come through on the toolbox side. And if you have any questions, that's my contact information, and I appreciate you showing up. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Wendy. I'm still watching for chat, so I don't see any questions yet for Will, but I think with that, we'll go ahead and hand it off to Sherry.
Before I get started on my stuff, I just want to kind of tack on to what Will just talked about with the last update field. The templates, the original template geodatabases actually have ties in them to update that field automatically, but it's fairly easy to break that tie. And particularly if you're importing and exporting data from different data sources, that can happen. So for those of you that are going, well, I've never updated that, why does it matter? It could be that your database is actually still updating it automatically as you make changes. We just have quite a few that aren't. And I see there's a request for the toolbox link. If somebody could grab that and put it in chat, that would be awesome. And if you can go on to the next slide, please, Eileen. So the first thing I'm going to talk about actually doesn't involve GeoMSAGs or training, but it involves map discrepancy reporting. You all should have gotten an email giving you some information about discrepancy reporting in the radius map that telecommunicators are using. There are two different kinds of discrepancy reports that they can initiate. These are just buttons basically that they click, and it opens a form that allows them to fill out some information, and that form is then emailed to a specific group of people. So relevant to all of you on this call are the map discrepancy reporting tool, which is currently programmed to email to a group of us involved with the council and with DASC, but also to the data steward and data maintainer that are currently listed in the portal for each PSAP. So the idea behind this tool is that it should be used to report issues with locally maintained GIS data, like address corrections or road name issues, that kind of thing. But it might also be used to report problems with map services, either layers that don't work or aren't fully populated, or geocoding failures, that kind of thing. There is a second tool, and I'm telling you guys about this for a reason, called the ALI, or Automatic Location Identification Discrepancy Reporting Tool. That tool is there to report problems with the information associated with wireline or VoIP calls, voice over IP, but those are generally either inaccurate or missing address information. It's for reporting misrouted calls that go to the wrong 911 center, and also for reporting bad location coming in on wireless calls. But all of that stuff has something to do with location. And if you'd go to the next slide, please. The reason that I'm talking to you about both of them is because, at least in my experience, if it has a map, it tends to get blamed on GIS or reported to GIS to fix. So, and I'll hit this a little bit later that we are seeing this to a degree. But this is what an email looks like for a map discrepancy report. This is an example that came in. It's a test message. If you take a look, you'll see that it says it's a map discrepancy report. It tells you what 911 center. It tells you what agent number, although that's not very relevant to all of us, but it does give the user's name as well. And a screenshot center point. So where their map was centered when they triggered this report. There's also a field for them to fill out to describe what the problem is. And of course, hopefully it'll be more descriptive than this is a test. But there's a screenshot attached. And if you go to the next slide, I've got a copy of it. So this is the screenshot that came in with the email that you just saw. And you'll notice that there's really not any indication on this screenshot of what the problem is. That's why the description field from the email and from the reporting form are so important. We put together some training for all of the telecommunicators, really giving some examples of what we felt was necessary to put in that description field and how important it was to include anything. But if you get a screenshot like this, there is a very good chance the problem is roughly in the middle, even though it's not indicated. So next slide, please. So here's what has actually come in so far. So we've actually had address corrections, GIS problems that could get resolved. That's great. But because we're displaying parcel ownership information, we're getting a few reports of, hey, Bob doesn't live there anymore, or this store has moved, that kind of thing. And, you know, whether or not that is even remotely relevant to the GIS person involved really depends on the local workflow. And there's a whole lot of questions there. We'll probably still continue to get these over time. But if you're not sure what to do with them, you can always give us a shout. The other thing that we're seeing, and this is also going to continue to happen over time, I'm sure, is reporting bad wireless locations. This is not a GIS issue. And if anybody is interested, I had considered going through and doing kind of a lunch and learn thing about all the things that can go right and wrong with wireless call location, because there are so many different levels and so many different steps to it. It's not super GIS relevant, but I think it's pretty fascinating. And of course, it is GIS relevant, just not for the data that we're producing and putting on that map. So this type of problem, when somebody is calling from one town and the phone company is reporting a different town, for example, this is not a GIS problem. But we are probably going to continue to get these, and that means that you're going to continue to get copies of them. Just know that we can see them as well. Will, Eileen, and I all see them, but so do some of the other people involved in the council project, so that they can kind of get taken care of and get routed properly. Now, as far as using the alley discrepancy reporting tool, the tool that should be used for that, we've only seen test records come through with that. And like I said, my experience is if somebody says the word map, people get transferred to GIS. And I'm sure this is going to be the case here as well. The map discrepancy report is easy to find, familiar. It's the map after all. So we're probably going to see more reports of things that maybe should have been in the other tool, but it's not on you to fix them. If you believe that you're getting too many, or you don't know who you should be telling about them, if anyone, you can always get with us and we'll help you work that out. Which is kind of what the bottom note is. If you get anything like that in your email, please review it. And if you see any GIS issues or GIS related issues, address them as soon as you can. But if you don't know what to do with it, or you're not sure if it's your issue or not, you can always check with us. So next slide, please. Quick GeoMSAG update. We actually had a meeting earlier this week with AT&T's new database team, the PSP team, or Public Safety Platform team. We put together last year a beta group because the PSP team thought that they were ready to begin testing, and that didn't turn out to be true. Our most recent call suggested that the testing platform that they have may not be able to support our entire beta test group. So this very initial phase, we just grabbed a couple of counties and we'll be doing some initial testing, but that is starting, if not later this week, then early next week. And as soon as we get through this initial phase, we'll be engaging the full beta test team. So when will that be, and when will the whole thing get done so that everybody can sign in like I've been talking about for 2 years? No idea. We keep relaying, I keep relaying estimates that come from PSP or are based on what we hear, but there is a whole lot to be done in that project, and the estimates just have not been very good so far. So I'm not even going to guess or give you a guideline to go by right now, but I will say that we'll keep you updated, and that we'll communicate as often as we can, both during this call and then also as stages come up that more people are getting involved in, we'll be sending out emails and notifying you that way. Until then, no PSAP in the state has direct access to their 911 data unless they're on the beta test team. And what that means is, if you need to research something, you may not have access to do so. If your PSAP needs to research something, they may not have access to do so. If you come up with any problems where you think seeing into that database will be useful or important, please contact us. Primarily, I mean me, and I will find out what I can for you and help you resolve those problems. Several of you do that already. Just feel free to continue to, because I think it'll be fairly easy to keep track of the issues. We've had so few, honestly, since the transition to PSP, that I think it'll be very easy to keep track of the issues as you guys come across them. So just let me know if you need anything. Next slide, please. And then finally, for training, as usual, we're planning right now to have the data maintainer class pre-conference at CAM, and the data steward class is available on the Learning Center platform for the Kansas 911 Coordinating Council. We've had quite a few 911 representatives take the class. The data maintainer class will also be made available on that platform later this year, and we will let you know as soon as that's there in case you can't make it to the live class. And I thought I had another slide, but I guess I didn't get it in there.
I didn't remove it accidentally. Oopsie.
The other slide was just a notification / reminder that I have transitioned to be full-time at DASC. So I no longer work for Dickinson County, and the big thing is for you guys, that means that my email has changed. So I thought I had a slide with it on there, but I guess I got rid of it. But my email is sherry.massey@ku.edu. So if you do use my old email, you'll get a bounce back that says, hey, this is where you need to go now. But I'm very excited to be in the new position and to be able to put full-time effort into this council project. And before we update, something has come up today that is not GIS related, but it kind of blew my mind, and it is important enough that I want to say it to all of you guys. We had a couple of calls a few weeks ago that did not route properly. And when I say that, I mean somebody called 911 in the city of Wichita, and the call ended up in Jewell County. If you're not that familiar with Kansas geography, that's over 200 miles away. And that person has called 911 a few times because they've got kind of a crisis situation going on. And every time that call went to Jewell County, and gosh, we were just trying to figure out why. And today, this morning, in fact, I got notified by Verizon as to what the issue was. This person has turned on Wi-Fi calling on their phone. And what Wi-Fi calling is, if you're not familiar with it, it's a setting depending on your phone that you can turn on. That means if you are on Wi-Fi and you either lose connection via cellular while you're on a phone call, or maybe even just kind of start to get less signal on cellular, it'll switch you over to Wi-Fi. This is great for call clarity and things like that. But while your phone call is on Wi-Fi instead of the cellular network, when you call 911, the 911 call goes to whatever address you put into your phone when you turned Wi-Fi calling on originally. For this person, it was probably several months, if not more than a year ago, and they lived in another county. They were unaware that they needed to update it. And certainly you're not going to update it everywhere you go, even though you may go from home to work to wherever Wi-Fi to Wi-Fi. So I am still in the middle of researching exactly how this works with all carriers, but it really does seem to be consistent that all of the carriers are saying, hey, you put the address in, so that's where you're calling 911 from, even if you're across the state, across the country, whatever. So this is something that I don't feel like has been very well advertised. And we, the coordinating council, will certainly be communicating about it here soon. But since I have you guys and you're my favorite group to work with, I wanted to make sure you guys were aware of it today. Again, it's called Wi-Fi calling, and it's a setting that exists on several models of both Android and Apple phones. And that, from what I can tell, pretty much every carrier supports. But it does fundamentally change how 911 works on your phone when you are on Wi-Fi to make a call. So thank you. And if you have any questions about that, you're welcome to drop me an email, or if anything shows up in chat. I just think it's important information to pass along. And if you have any loved ones that have a lot of medical issues, things like that, you might encourage them to not use Wi-Fi calling at all, because you never know when they're going to need to call 911, and it would be terrible if their actual location couldn't be identified because of that setting. Well, now that I've dropped that bomb, Eileen.
I know I'm sitting here looking at my phone settings.
Yeah.
Where's that at? What's happening? So yeah, it's amazing how all these years we've been waiting for more of this information to come from the cell phone. But now that it's almost being too useful and helpful.
Yes.
And we have to continue to adapt to accept it correctly. That's fascinating.
Yep. Well, and like with this, a lot of the providers, they only switch to Wi-Fi if they don't have cell signal at all. But some of them, Google Fi is the one that comes to mind immediately, but I think there's a couple of others that are the same way. They just try to give you the best experience possible. So you could switch to Wi-Fi as you walk through your house. You could switch onto Wi-Fi, back onto cellular, depending on where the signal strength is at the time. And that's a little scary from an emergency perspective, especially if, you haven't updated things.
Absolutely. So you think that is said, if you enable Wi-Fi calling, you think that there's a home or primary address associated with it.
There is.
Okay, and that, so I'm understanding correctly, and that might be updating on the fly, or does it always go back to that original setting?
No, that that address. So from what I'm seeing from all the carriers, they say when you turn that setting on the first time, it asks you for the address.
Okay,
And then that address never changes until you go in and change it.
okay. Okay.
And I see a question in chat. It does not, Bluetooth is not affected by this. This is entirely about coming off of the cellular network and only going over wireless, basically calling over the internet. It's just that the phones are getting smart enough to do it without telling you it's happening if you enable that. So the Bluetooth in the car, that's just fine. It's still going to route as though you were talking on your phone.
Hey, Sherry.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, it's Sarah Lynn. So I do have that turned on at my home, especially when we were working remotely for so long, because I don't have great cell service inside my house.
Right.
And but carriers are set up different. Mine is actually set up where it only recognizes my home Wi-Fi. And so it'll only do Wi-Fi calling when I am connected to only that Wi-Fi.
That's very cool.
So I do think that it would be helpful for people to coordinate with, say, their local 911 to do, some testing and just see how does it work for you when you're home, because my Wi-Fi calling won't work if I'm away. If I'm at McDonald's or Panera and I'm on the Wi-Fi there, it won't work.
Well, that's good to know, because the carriers that have responded so far haven't made that distinction.
Mm-hmm.
They have said that no matter what Wi-Fi it is connecting to, it's always going to relay that address.
And it
so
may be my phone too, different phones perhaps are different.
It could be different phones, it could be different carriers, it could also be different plans and different data levels. There's all kinds of things that could impact it. But it's something that I didn't know anyway that I would have to research and care about if I was going to use Wi-Fi calling. And I think a whole lot of people don't think about it very much, which is why I want to make sure and pass it along.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So someone asked the question about Bluetooth. Just to share a little story, I was driving home one day. I witnessed a car accident. I left my vehicle running. I got out, I had my phone and I called 911 and it acted like it connected and I was trying to talk. Well, I didn't know my Bluetooth was talking within my Jeep. So the dispatcher was talking in the Jeep, but couldn't hear me because I was outside the Jeep. And so finally I had to disconnect the Bluetooth to talk on my phone to the dispatcher. So.
Things we never think about, right?
Right.
Another example of helpful technology.
Right.
Jeez. Oh, gosh. All right. So I'm just gonna, I don't see any other questions in the chat. Before I wrap up here, I'm just gonna say that if there's every time Sherry does a lunch and learn on how 911 calls work, especially with new technology quirkiness, I think it's fabulous. So I'm just putting my vote out there to say, yes, anything you want to do, Sherry, for understanding, alleys and these discrepancies or whatever. I think the more we know, the better we understand exactly the GIS slice of it versus the whole 911 umbrella. So that's what I've said. Okay.
Nifty. I'll send off a message and see if we can't get somebody to sponsor it for us.
Awesome. Okay, well then really the final slide is just our wrap up. We went ahead and scheduled the user group meetings for the year. We've kind of done this just ad hoc as we've gone, oh my gosh, it's Q2. We need to figure out a meeting. So I thought we were trying to be a little more consistent with our scheduling and days. So there's the meeting schedule for you. We'll keep with having a webinar each quarter and then at the CAM conference doing a session in person with everyone. So that just went ahead and put the dates and the location for the CAM conference this year, which will be toward the end of October. As usual, you can get anything as far as standards or latest information from the Desk Hub 911 website. or the Kansas Coordinating 911 Coordinating Council's website. Let's see, I added Sherry's new email at the bottom there. It looks like we have another question. Jake said, it seems that with Wi-Fi calling, if the address defaulted to that of the Wi-Fi router, that would be in line with the location of the signal caller. So Sherry, did you want to address that at all?
Absolutely. And I agree with you. It sure would. As long as when people move the routers, they updated them. You guys have probably heard almost every class I make a comment about voice over IP and making sure that certain types of voice over IP services, and I always pick on Vonage because it's the one that everybody has heard of with their TV commercials and everything. But that you have to update the address, because what's going to 911 is the address based on what you typed in when you first got the service usually. And using the router is a very good idea, but it would be very similar to that. People would still need to be aware that as they moved a router or traded it in, as you know, a service provider that rents them, moved in place to place, it would need to be updated. But that would be a really cool idea. I know that from what I'm seeing from the carriers, that's not what happens. But that is a nice way to kind of get closer to the actual location of the caller for certain. That
Yep.
would be great.
That's why we saw that follow-up from Jake. Absolutely. Okay, well, with that, that is really our update for today. I don't see any new questions in the chat, so I'd like to thank you all for joining us. I think I'm a little delinquent. I need to put the slides out from the Q3, Q4 combo meeting, as well as these new ones. So they've been working on redoing the 911 Coordinating Council website. So you'll be seeing some updates there. So I'll get the slides out in the recording here probably in the next couple of days. In the meantime, if you have any questions or anything, feel free to reach out to myself or Will or Sherry, and we'd be happy to help. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.